Hello, everybody, and welcome to Play by Play, the daily wrestling podcast, episode 13. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us. This is going to be a fun episode. We're going to be talking about loads and loads. My name is Atif Nawaz. I am your host, and with me, as always, is the main man himself, Mr. Arman Kirmani.
I'm shaking my head.
Why?
Because I need the audience to see what I feel like right now.
Oh, you're tired? Are you sleepy?
No, not at all.
What?
I'm genuinely upset about the topic we're going to talk about today.
Okay, fair enough. Well, there's a good indication about something that's upsetting. There's a lot upsetting about wrestling these days, I imagine. But
But I'm really genuinely angry about this.
Well, that's good. That's good.
We're going to talk about SmackDown, and I'm really upset.
And so you should be. But before we get there, let's take a second to thank our wonderful partners, eWrestling News, eWrestlingNews.com. Make sure you check those guys out. Loads of news, loads of rumors, loads of great articles from around the world on there about what's happening in wrestling and professional wrestling and TNA and WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all over the place. So it's a fantastic website. It's a great one-stop shop. So check them out. And of course, they host our podcast as well. So check us out while you're there. And also a shout out to topropepress.com, who are also friends of ours. So check out that website. Also great news and information on that website as well. So the main topic of today's podcast.
I've got some bad news for you.
Yeah, and so I think you do. The topic of today's podcast is, of course, the continued mistreatment of the Intercontinental Championship in WWE.
This is the self-destruction of the Intercontinental title.
Yeah, and like you see, this is why we called it that, because famously WWE released a DVD back when they were on bad relations with the Ultimate Warrior. I bought that DVD as well.
Well, now that you bring him up, he was one of the greatest Intercontinental champions. I mean,
he most certainly was.
Well, just the fact that he lifted what the Intercontinental belt meant, and sort of it looked good around his waist, around all those colors, and the way he just came in, stormed and defeated Honky Tonk Man in that legendary sort of match. I think it was SummerSlam, was it 89?
88 or 89.
One of those ones, and it was just phenomenal. Just the fact that Honky Tonk Man had held the belt for so long, given his credibility, and this new guy came in and just roared in. Honky Tonk Man doesn't know who his opponent's going to be. The music hits. Gorilla Monsoon selling it.
Wait a minute, I know that music.
Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, as you say, rightly, the Ultimate Warrior was somebody who lifted the Intercontinental Championship to the point where it was on par with WWE Championship. In fact, as Intercontinental Champion, he defeated Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6. And we'll talk about the storied lineage of it. But let's talk about the Intercontinental Championship today and why everybody's dissatisfied. Of course, there's been loads of short reigns from champions, people losing non-title matches. Let's look at Bad News Barrett, who's the current Intercontinental Champion. Okay, this past, today on SmackDown, he loses another non-title match, this time to Dolph Ziggler, who was the previous champion. He also lost to Sin Cara recently. He lost to Dean Ambrose recently, consistently in non-title matches. I know he got his win back from Sin Cara, but there's absolutely no respect left for the Intercontinental Champion. I mean, this is a belt. This is a title that would occasionally headline house shows, pay-per-views, especially in the era where you don't have a world champion that's always present. This belt is supposed to, signify excellence, and they've just reduced it to a glorified jobber with a bit of gold around his waist.
And even worse, they brought back the old WWE Intercontinental style design for the belt to give it back that old credibility, and yet they're still messing it up. They're still destroying the legacy of it by continuously booking the champion to lose in free not even pay-per-view, free Raw, free SmackDown, and it's absolutely destroying the title, the heritage. I mean, you look at legends like Mr. Perfect, Rick Rude, Bret Hart,
Shawn Michaels,
Chris
Jericho, even.
Absolutely, Chris Jericho. I think he's held it the most number.
I think so. Yeah, he's had the most reigns as a world champion.
But that's really, Chris Jericho is a great performer, and yes, the belt goes with him. It's synonymous with his legacy. But now it's like you give it to Bad News Barrett and you just keep wrecking him by making him lose to Sin Cara. What's going on?
And it's not just Bad News Barrett. So before that, what annoys me is I get all these people doing these promos where they talk about, I'm going to restore the legacy of this championship. I'm going to make it mean something again. And I think Dolph Ziggler did a promo like that when he won the championship recently. And then he dropped it to Luke Harper on a pay-per-view. And then he won it back again. And I don't know why they played hot potato. I don't know what the idea was. It didn't build Luke Harper to hold the championship for like a month.
Michaels in his book says something really good. It was the My Journey autobiography that came out a few years back. Yeah, he says that one of the great things about the belts is a lot of wrestlers make the mistake of making the belt try and make them. And what you've actually got to try and do is make the belt. And that's a really deep sort of saying, because actually, if you think about it, if you look back at that era, WrestleMania 10, sort of 94, 95,
oh yeah,
those matches, they were stealing the show. They weren't the main event. But people were, I mean, in 92 SummerSlam, it was the main event.
Oh, absolutely.
Famously, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that it really propelled the performers, because what Michael's strategy was at that time, and he's one of the greatest, right? Let's just
absolutely
make that clear.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
With the Intercontinental, it's kind of, he looked better with the Intercontinental belt around his waist than he did with the World Championship, and that's strange, but that's definitely sort of true. And maybe even had more exciting matches. And really, that all comes down to the hard work, the booking, what it meant to these. And he was, I mean, if you look at that WrestleMania 10 match, what a lot of people forget when they look back on it is Michaels was a heel going into that match.
Yeah, yeah.
And doing all those spots at the top of the ladder.
And he lost both as well.
And he lost, well, he lost what?
SummerSlam.
No, he won at SummerSlam.
Oh, sorry, did he lose at WrestleMania 10?
He lost at WrestleMania 10.
I beg your pardon.
He wins the rematch at SummerSlam, which was actually meant to be a match between him and Sid. But at the last minute, it gets replaced between him and Razor.
I tell you what, I don't mean to interrupt. Yeah. Continue when you do in a second. But I just want to give a shout out to Danger Rich 32 at Danger Rich 32 on Twitter. He wrote a piece for What Culture about I think eight matches that Shawn Michaels had where he was all the better for losing. Yeah. So 8 matches where he looked great and a loss. And it was a really good read, actually. So I wanted to shout out Danger Rich for that piece.
Everyone's got to check that out. But I can give you my own piece, because the fact of the matter is that Michaels losing the belt. And I mean, the problem with Michaels was he always handed over belts. But even the storylines, when he was handing over, I remember it was at In Your House when he gets beaten up and he hands it over
to Dean Douglas.
Yeah. You know, we love Dean Douglas.
Yeah, big fans.
And
Shane, whatever he likes to
be
called.
Just that angle where he was so disappointed and upset that he couldn't perform, and then the happiness with which Dean Douglas takes it, and then loses the same night. I think it's to Razor.
He made a whole music video about him giving up the belt.
Absolutely.
Tell me a lie. Was that what it was?
Yeah,
Tell
absolutely.
me a lie. Yes,
it was. So this is the legacy that we're talking about, and now you're giving it to Bad News Barrett, who's jobbing to Sin Cara, who's jobbing to Ziggler just after he's taken the belt off him. What's going on?
And it's not just the point. It's important that we make this point. It's not just about one bad champion or a performer not carrying the belt well, 1 or 2 in sequence, because that happened back in the day as well. They used to give the championship to loads of people who they thought didn't cut the mustard. I mean, the British Bulldog held the championship for a very short amount of time. And he was never really there. Owen Hart had the championship, but he wasn't always, he wasn't considered that top line contender. I think, I was going to ask you for your point on this as well. What would be the best way, do you think, for WWE to restore prominence around the belt? I like the last era I liked with the championship was when Cody Rhodes, when he was wearing the mask. Do you remember when he had that whole psychological thing going on? He gave those paper bags to people around the audience.
I thought he did a great job. I think
he did,
right.
and he held the belt for a long time. It meant something. He was headlining SmackDown.
Was he the guy that brought back the old style belt as well?
It was him. It was Cody Rhodes.
I think it was Cody Rhodes who brought it back. I mean, what I'd like to see is something like the King of the Ring, kind of tournament style. The winner gets awarded the Intercontinental and then has a year-long reign and then defends it at Mania. I would like to see, just like at Wrestle Kingdom 9, how the Intercontinental was just before the world title. And in fact, in Wrestle Kingdom 8 for New Japan, the Intercontinental main event.
By fan vote as well.
Exactly. So what I would want is a massive push behind something like the equivalent of the King of the Ring. It doesn't have to be the King of the Ring. That could be a standalone event if you feel like that.
But let's take that further. What if they did an annual tournament to determine the #1 contender for the Intercontinental Championship? So there was an annual tournament, and it was given that prestige because New Japan is all about the tournaments. They have like G1 Climax and this tournament and Best of the Super Juniors and Super J Cup and World Tag Team League. They do all sorts of tournaments all year long, and fans buy into them. WWE even abandoned the King of the Ring concept.
Yeah, and they relegated it first to like SmackDown.
Yeah,
and then they kind of gave up on it there as well.
Well, Daniel Bryan recently in an interview said he'd love to see that make a comeback, specifically on SmackDown, just to give secondary wrestlers an angle, especially people who are lost in the shuffle. I mean, that's one way. But I think the real way to bring significance at this point back to the Intercontinental Championship, there's 2 ways to go about it. One, you can give somebody a long reign, as you suggested. But I think even now, people might not buy into that. I think you have to give it to a main event level talent. and let him headline shows with the Intercontinental Championship. He'll never do it, but I'd like to see John Cena wear the Intercontinental Championship for a while and stress the significance of it.
Well, that would definitely give it some sort of credibility and take some sort of some of the tarnish away from what's happened to it to an extent. I'm not sure John Cena is the guy to take away the tarnish.
What do you mean? John Cena, even Roman Reigns, even or Daniel Bryan?
Well, the problem is at the moment, if you give it to a Bryan or you give it to a Reigns, it actually relegates them. That's how sad it's become.
Yeah.
Because actually, the title is now destroying the image for the top end wrestlers because of the way it's been booked. So that needs to change. And one of the disappointing things is, like, I encourage the viewers to think about this as well, and yourself, right? I could probably track back World Heavyweight Championships still, just about, if I went back 10 or 15 sort of last holders.
Yeah.
I bet you couldn't do that with the Intercontinental.
No, I suppose you couldn't. It's so hard just to go back to the last 3 or 4.
There you go.
You know?
There you go.
So,
right.
I mean, who did Dolph Ziggler even win it from before he dropped it to Luke Harper?
Yeah.
I should know that, but yeah.
No, and when you talk about, when they've got the history of the WWE title, it's a legacy. You can kind of remember who dropped it. And I bet you could remember, if you went back to the 90s, you could track it. You could say he dropped it to him, then he won it back, then he dropped it to him. There's a time.
I can do that.
And you remember that. And remember that because of the importance of the belt. And this is like, look, we'll talk about the Rumble. We can talk about the Rumble winners. Right.
But it's also
remember them.
Yeah, of course we do remember the Rumble winners,
and that's how important the Intercontinental title.
Do you think one of the reasons where it took a hit in significance over the years was because of the introduction of the United States Championship?
I think that the brand split was definitely a problem because they introduced new belts. Also, it meant one roster just never ever fought for the Intercontinental belt.
Would you prefer to see the Intercontinental as the top belt of one roster and the World Championship? Instead of having 2 World Championships, you use your Intercontinental as your de facto second World Championship?
I'll be honest, I know that a lot of people are fans of things like the Cruiserweight title, the Hardcore title, the US Championship.
European, don't forget that one.
European, of course. I was never a fan of the introduction of all of these new titles. I quite liked the fact that we had one tag team at the top, we had one Intercontinental, and it just gave it a lot more meaning. Because when you had 7 titles, right? You had everyone.
Night of Champions. They have the whole pay-per-view about this Night of Champions, where every match is a title match.
But it's just, I think that was exactly what started to degrade the Intercontinental, because now you start to think, hang on, the Hardcore match was better than the Intercontinental match, or you started to think, hang on, the US champion is a better wrestler than the Intercontinental. Yeah. And then you start to sort of battle within the sort of titles themselves. And there's no real clear division of which title means.
Well, let me tell you one thing they did in WCW, because they actually had more belts than WWE all along, right? They had something called the World Television title, which is something I never really understood. So it's only supposed to be defended on television. Is it a World Championship or not? Clearly not that significant because mid-carders are holding it. But the significance of that title was raised. Steve Austin held it, absolutely. Bret Hart famously said he wanted to win every title in WCW apart from the television title because he didn't understand it. Love it. Nothing but love for Bret Hart. But so this television title, they built up the significance of this with a 7-match series between Booker T and Chris Benoit, which predictably went to 3-all. Every match was stunning. They were on Nitro. They might have been on Thunder or pay-per-view or something. But I think the majority of them were on Monday Nitro. And they were fantastic matches. As you know, Booker T back in the day, top-class worker, and Chris Benoit we all know about, right, in the ring. So they built up the significance. They even redid that angle in WWE years later over the US Championship, where they did a best of 5 because WWE doesn't have patience for 7 matches.
Yeah, I remember
so best of 5, Booker T and Chris Benoit. I think you're right. A lot of it is about the wrestler making the championship, but they've got to put the championship in angles, make it mean something. I mean, remember when Steve Austin chucked the Intercontinental Championship into the river when The Rock was there, and it was like, oh my God, I can't believe he did that. That's the Intercontinental Championship. Yeah. I also don't like, it was that prestige of the belt was watered down by the fact that people can now buy replica championships. I don't think that's a good idea on any level whatsoever. You can't go out and buy a proper replica of the Football World Cup or the Cricket World Cup or the Snooker World Cup, or whatever it is that you like to watch, right?
So when we go to the O2 and we watch the live event, we've got people there with the spinner belt,
the
old Eagle belt.
Oh yeah, you see all the championships.
The rated R championship.
And hey, let's be honest, right? They look very cool, and it's a cool thing as a fan to be able to own them. But I almost prefer.
Your dream.
It's my dream to convince my wife to let me buy one. But I almost prefer those toy championships. You know, those little toy ones that the kids have.
Yeah.
And then the crucial thing when I was a kid. Well, back in the day, from Argos, right? So I remember back in the day, they wouldn't even resemble the actual championship.
Yeah.
So and they wouldn't strap properly. They were done in a way to make sure they were completely distinct from the championship that was worn on television, because that is some larger than life thing that you can only aspire to. I know nowadays they're thinking in WWE is, you know what, it's an entertainment product. The titles don't necessarily matter as much as they used to. It's about the overall product and presentation and entertainment. Blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, but I love the Intercontinental Championship. I love matches like Marty Jannetty versus Shawn Michaels on Raw. I loved when the 1-2-3 Kid was in the picture. You know, I loved all these little interesting things that happened with the IC Championship. The Warrior Rick Rude, that feud as well. And Mr. Perfect, even Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich. So it was all, there were so many interesting things that happened around this belt that are just being tarnished now.
I think the other thing there is when they keep changing the design of a belt, it also messes with me. I remember the one that The Rock threw was a different design to the original one, right? That was
the one that Steve Austin threw.
Sorry,
that was the old. I think it was the last appearance, the black strap and the normal gold plate. Yeah, and they changed it afterwards.
I remember The Rock did hold that.
Rock held the new style.
Held the new style as well. So it was around that period. I don't remember the design of the one he threw, but I think that affected it for me as well. And then did it change again? I'm just trying to think. Did it change again?
The next change after that style, I'm pretty sure, is the current one that you see now on TV.
Right. So anyways, that for me, definitely in the new generation era, when they changed it, I wasn't very happy with it, because I think, that old, and they also did these things where they had, I think the Warrior had a green strap, then it was a black strap, then it turned to a white strap when Michaels had it.
Well, Goldust had a gold strap.
And exactly, right? So I think when you keep changing the colours of the title to meet the rest of it, which is why I think a lot of people had a problem when we had the spinner WWE belt, because you think, what the hell have they made the belt to meet? And then Edge won it, and he copied it, the exact same design, and had rated R Superstar on it.
And he held it for like a month.
And when Austin won it, I remember he had like Smoking Skull on it.
That was probably the best customized design though.
And then The Rock, of course, famously introduced the new design as well. I think.
Well, the Rock, they built a belt for the Rock back in the Attitude Era,
I remember that,
which they never took on television because they had to abandon the angle. But yeah, I see what you mean. So the brand new design, which when The Rock defeated CM Punk at Royal Rumble.
So I think that a lot of people are. This is a big point to make here about the titles. One of the big things that took away the importance from the Intercontinental was the introduction of the SmackDown or Raw, whichever one you want to look at the time, was the World Heavyweight WCW belt, which came over. Because that suddenly became the second title, didn't it? About it. Like for since round extension 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
We had 2 world title matches even at WrestleMania. You had one guy fighting for the WWE belt and then one for the... So I'm glad that they unified that, and I think it was The Rock who came back and tried to unify it.
Well, Well, I mean, there's been multiple times where they've tried to unify it properly.
Well, I'm glad that
now they've got a new belt that covers everything.
Now they call it
the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Long name.
Which is actually still, when they go back and track the history of it, they're going to get rid of the WCW
the lineage
title.
Or it'll go down as unified with WWE Championship.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm glad. I'm better for that. But that, I think, also played a very important factor in getting rid of the Intercontinental's legacy, because you can't really have a second world heavyweight belt and then have a mid-card belt that leads to which one or the other title. Do you know what I mean? It made it very messy.
Do you think the US Championship is considered to be quite significant? Because there's been 2 long reigns with this now. Rusev won it from Dean Ambrose. Now, Dean Ambrose had the longest reign with that championship since it's been in WWE. And then, of course, you had Rusev win it, who's held it for a very long time as well now. It's been quite, I don't remember how long, but it's been shortly after, I think, Ambrose turned face, which has been a while now.
I've got to be honest with you, man. I genuinely forgot that the US title still exists, because it doesn't get defended.
You love Rusev.
But I don't think he needs... I love him, but he doesn't need the title to define him.
But does he make the belt better and more significant?
No, I still think that they fail to make any importance on the belt itself. The US title, how can you have a title that's never defended?
Well, I think he does defend it from time to time, but it's not in any... I mean, WWE are famously and kind of annoyingly continuously taking the easy way out, which is to book the championship at DQ finishes in non-title matches regularly, and to the point where it doesn't make sense. I mean, back in the day, I don't remember seeing any non-title matches. Every match was a title match. When you saw the belt, it was going to be a title match.
And why is the wrestler who holds the belt fighting in non-title matches all the time?
It makes no sense.
Why is that regularly happening? I can kind of understand when you've got mid-carders and there isn't the belt. I can even understand if they don't defend the IC belt a couple of weeks on Raw.
Yeah.
But what I can't understand is why the IC champion continuously fights in non-title matches and jobs.
No, absolutely, and I'm completely with you. Now, one of the things I wanted to suggest, right, for WWE, there's 3 things I think that are going to help in lifting the Intercontinental Championship's prestige. And one of the things, as you said, was unifying the belt. So they're halfway there. The main thing is consistency, right?
Yeah.
The reason why I think a lot of people will probably maybe disagree with you about the US Championship, it has a little bit more prestige, is because it's not been passed around like a hot potato for the last few years, right? A consistent champion. Number 2, you got to get rid of these non-title matches. Your IC champion should be somebody you expect to be world heavyweight champion in the next 2 years. So you should not be jobbing to whoever else is on your agenda at the moment, right? You've got to treat it properly. And number 3, I think it's got to be that belt should be, that championship should be associated with a show, right? So if it's headlining SmackDown every week instead of the countless tag team, 6-man, 8-man, 10-man, 20-man, whatever tag team matches they put together for headline SmackDown, if that championship is always headlining SmackDown, then all of a sudden, number 1, you've got a worker champion. It becomes that belt of the workers again, you know?
Yeah.
I think Dolph Ziggler is actually the ideal person to hold the belt, considering he's considered one of the best in the ring.
And he looks a lot like Mr. Perfect.
He does look like a lot like Mr. Perfect. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. And I think WWE should take a lot of lessons from New Japan as well. They've got Shinsuke Nakamura as their current Intercontinental Champion. And he is, he's amazing. I mean, when he walks to the ring, I remember watching his entrance at Wrestle Kingdom 9. Yeah, the crowd was with him. He was doing Michael Jackson stuff. He was doing Mick Jagger and who was the other guy? Freddie Mercury. And then I remember when he chucked the belt off or chucked his robe off and leaned to the crowd, they went nuts. And Japanese crowds don't go nuts. They're very polite. So, I mean, that's one way to get around it. Put the belt on a star and let him hold it for a long time. The last star I remember holding the championship was probably Triple H when they did the 2-man power trip angle with Austin. So I'd like to see a big star hold the championship.
Or Jericho, arguably.
I don't like the idea of a part-timer holding the belt. Well, I think that denigrates it further.
Yeah,
that's a word he likes. Denigrate. Anyway, so that's my idea for the Intercontinental Championship. And guys, you're listening to this. We want to get your opinion as well. How would you elevate the Intercontinental Championship?
Who was your favorite Intercontinental Champion?
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Pick one. No,
Mine?
I'm asking you.
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a tough one because I like so many.
Yeah. Okay. I want to hear your top 3, but you and go.
Have I got a number that
go backwards? Yeah. So 3, 2, and then 1.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna go backwards for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a pre-Attitude Era New Generation brat, right? So you're gonna get that from this. Okay.
That's fine.
Let's start at number 3. Yeah. Number 3. It's got to be Razor Ramon. Right, or Scott Hall, Razor Ramon.
Another great champion.
Yeah, fantastic Intercontinental champion. I remember he won it for the 4th time.
I want to make a point here really quickly, right? A lot of people talk about that ladder match and they actually don't give him the credit that I think is due. I think they keep saying, Michaels, and as great as Michaels was, I think as Ric Flair says that Michaels had that match with the ladder. I completely disagree. Razor was a tall, big guy, quite a big guy at that time as well. He was not going to do high spots off the top of the ladder, right? And he took some bumps.
Yeah, he took some massive bumps.
But he didn't need to do the bumps that Michaels did. And Michaels had a high-flying sort of smaller physique at the time, and it fit his story.
Hall's a great wrestler.
And I thought Hall told a great story.
Scott Hall is a fantastic wrestler. I'm not going to put him in that top bracket with my Bret Harts, my Shawn Michaels, or in the star bracket with my Hogans and my Austins. But I will say he was one of the, that tier below of interesting personality stars, great performers. He's up there. So anyway, he's my 3rd Intercontinental Champion.
There you go.
Number 2, I'm going to put Bret the Hitman Hart down because I just love the way he carried the belt. I love his style and swagger when he had the championship. The moments when he won the belt are so memorable as well and so iconic for me in my childhood. I remember seeing
when he
Roddy Piper
kicked out of the Perfect Plex at 1991 SummerSlam.
He gave Roddy Piper his first ever pinfall defeat in WWE in a singles match, so that was pretty cool. And I absolutely loved that, which would make my number 1 Intercontinental champion of all time. I can't believe I'm saying this. It's going to be Shawn Michaels.
Well, what do you mean you can't believe it's saying?
Because I always rate Brett over Shawn.
Yeah, well, not for the Intercontinental, because actually Brett's run for the WWE title was more iconic at that same era.
At the same time.
But Michaels, in making that belt and having match after match after match, even that match where he defeats the Bulldog to win it.
Oh yeah,
it's like on
Saturday night's main event.
Well, exactly.
It's available on WWE Network.
And it was a fantastic ending as well. I remember reversing the suplex of the top rope and just converting it into a pin.
One more note on that, by the way. So at the 1992 Survivor Series, Shawn Michaels took on Bret Hart. Bret Hart was world champion. Who was the Intercontinental champion? Shawn Michaels. So he's been put in that position where he can challenge the world champion and walk out with both belts plausibly. So, there's a way to bring prestige to the title. I think WWE needs to look into that. What do you guys think, guys? Make sure you tweet us. Make sure you get in touch. Let us have your views. Who are your favorite Intercontinental champions? How do you think we should elevate the belt? Of course, on Twitter, find us at PlayByPlay123. Email us questions at PlayByPlay123.co.uk. And please like our page on Facebook, which is facebook.com/PlayByPlay Wrestling. Now, before we go, of course, we're going to give you the match of the day and the Dean Douglas Award of the day as well. Now, was it your match of the day or my match of the day yesterday? It was mine, right? It was yours. My question, your match of the day.
I think it was your question and my match of the day.
See, the thing, I remember the debate we had. We were talking about how to fill Dallas Cowboy Stadium, right? Yeah. And it was just one of those. It was such a crazy one. And again, we didn't get a correct answer yesterday. Right. We had a ton of interaction, but no correct answer. So we're going to roll over the question one more time. There you go. And you've got another chance to try and answer the question.
So what was the official? Let me remember the question, which was, what was the official? Figure of the actual ticket sales for WrestleMania 3, and not 93,000. Right?
Yes.
So I thought about this, and I remember you mentioning it in the early podcast, but yeah, we didn't get any correct answers for it. That's
weird, right? So yeah, 93,000 is the number that WWE says they got for WrestleMania 3, but what was the actual number? And this is widely reported. It was reported in Power Slam, Wrestle Talk, PWI, PW Torch, all over the place. Every credible wrestling magazine and news reporter knows the actual number. So find it and tell it to us, or just listen to our episode from yesterday. Anyway, so match of the day. You gave yours yesterday. I will give mine today. And since we're talking about the Intercontinental Championship, I'm going to give you an Intercontinental Championship match that I remember that elevated 2 different stars. It's going to be The Rock versus Triple H at SummerSlam 1998.
The ladder match.
That's the ladder match.
Absolutely.
Indeed. So The Rock, at the time, leader of the Nation of Domination, and Triple H, leader of D-Generation X, both fighting over the Intercontinental Championship, and they were both, right on the cusp of greatness. And it's one of those matches which shows you how to lose a match but increase your status and make yourself a bigger star. So check that out, and of course you can find it on the WWE Network. And hey, guys, get in touch with us. I think that's it. That's it. We're done for today.
Wow.
We're going to be back tomorrow. Tune in for tomorrow's episode, which is going to be a preview of the Royal Rumble, our final preview. So excited about the Royal Rumble. Are you excited, Arman?
I'm very, very excited because I genuinely don't know who's going to win.
Yeah, that's great. We'll talk a lot about that tomorrow. But for now, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Play by Play, the daily wrestling podcast, episode 13 in the can. Get in touch. I'm Atif Nawaz. He's Arman Kermani. We're saying
goodbye.